program is the Active Center.
Have you ever looked at house prices in California and just felt your jaw drop? I mean, $1 million for a home sounds like a mansion in most places, right? But in California, that's kind of becoming the new normal. So today, we're going to break down why. Why is a house in California so unbelievably expensive? Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's just put a number on it. Right now, as of mid-2025, this is the median price for a single-family home in California, $884,000.50. And remember, median means half the homes sold for more than this. It's just staggering.
But here's where it gets really wild. You take that number and you compare it to the rest of the country, and wow, California's median home price is more than double the national average. That massive gap, it's not some accident. It's been built over decades by policy choices and some serious market pressures. It's a uniquely Californian problem.
So yeah, the big question is, how did it get this bad? And the answer, well, it isn't simple. It's this tangled web of different factors. To really get it, we have to look at the very foundation of how homes get built, or, more importantly, don't get built, in the Golden State.
Okay, so let's get down to it. The core of the problem, really, is simple economics 101, supply and demand. You've got way more people who want to live here than there are homes available. The real mystery, the thing we're going to dig into, is why it's so incredibly hard to just build more.
Now, you might think, well, land is expensive, labor is expensive, and you'd be right. But study after study points to one of the biggest culprits, a super dense thicket of government regulations, both at the state and local level. And these rules, they often start with good intentions, but they can end up adding tens of thousands of dollars and years of delays to a single project.
So imagine you're a builder. Trying to build new homes in California is like running a brutal four-part obstacle course. First, you've got zoning and what you're even allowed to build. Then you have to do an environmental review. After that, you're drowning in permit applications. And finally, you have to pay a whole bunch of really expensive fees. So let's walk through each of these hurdles one by one.
All right, first up, zoning. Basically, these are the local rules that tell you what you can build and where you can build it. You can think of it like the city's master plan for growth, and honestly, it's where the first major bottleneck really shows up.
And here's the absolute heart of the zoning fight. In so many California cities, huge chunks of residential land are legally reserved only for single-family homes. That's it. So developers literally can't build denser, more affordable stuff like duplexes or small apartment buildings. Even when the demand is screaming for it, it's a legal wall that puts a hard cap on the housing supply. And look, this isn't just some boring technical debate. It gets philosophical fast. On the one hand, from a more conservative point of view, this kind of zoning is all about protecting property rights and preserving the character of a neighborhood. The classic American dream. But from a liberal perspective, it's seen as a tool that, historically, has created a ton of economic and even racial segregation. They argue that we need more density to build communities that are actually inclusive. Okay, so let's say a developer actually finds a spot where they're allowed to build something. They're not in the clear yet, not even close. They immediately slam into the next hurdle, a huge state law called the California Environmental Quality Act. You'll hear it called CEQA.
Now, CEQA started with a really noble goal, protecting California's incredible natural beauty and, our health. It forces developers to do these massive, detailed studies on how a new project might affect, well, everything. We're talking air quality, traffic, wildlife, you name it.
But, and this is a big but, here we go again with the deep ideological divide. Conservatives will often argue that CEQA has been totally weaponized, that Not in My Backyard or NIMBY groups use it to block housing for reasons that have zero to do with the actual environment. Liberals, on the other hand, will defend it to the hilt, saying it's a vital tool that gives communities a voice and stops developers from just building whatever they want with no accountability. So, a developer somehow manages to clear zoning and the environmental review? Think they're done? Nope. Now they get to enter the final, and often the longest part of this maze, getting all the actual permits and paying all the fees. And I'm not kidding when I say these delays are huge. We are not talking about a few weeks or a couple of months. For a big housing project, it can take, on average, 2 to 4 years just to get the final go-ahead. Just think about that. Every single year of delay piles on enormous costs. Financing, insurance, taxes, and all of that gets passed right down to the person who eventually rents or buys the place.
And then, on top of all those delays, you have the direct costs. Cities charge what are called impact fees. The idea is to pay for stuff like new parks, roads, and schools that the new residents will use. And yeah, that stuff is necessary, but the fees can be absolutely staggering. We're talking about some cities where these fees add over $75,000 to the cost of a single apartment, and that's before they've even poured the foundation.
And as you can probably guess by now, yeah, there's a big debate here too. Conservatives tend to look at these fees as just a straight-up tax on new homes, which just makes them even less affordable. But liberals argue, hey, new development creates new needs, so it's only fair that growth pays for itself instead of sticking existing taxpayers with the bill. Okay, so after running through all these problems, it's pretty easy to feel, well, kind of pessimistic. But there is a growing movement that's pushing hard for change, and their ideas target the exact regulatory hurdles we've just spent all this time talking about.
There's this growing movement of housing advocates. You probably heard of them. They're called YIMBYs, for Yes in My Backyard. And they are pushing for some major deregulation. They want to reform zoning to allow for more apartment buildings. They want to streamline that whole CEQA process so it can't be used to just block projects willy-nilly. And they want a permitting system that's way faster and more predictable. The whole idea is really simple. Make it easier, faster, and cheaper to build, and you'll get more supply. And when supply goes up, prices should, in theory, come down. But all these policy debates we've been having about zoning and CEQA and fees, they all point to a much, much deeper question. The fight over California's housing crisis, it's not really just about regulations. It's about what we even think affordable housing actually is.
When you boil it all down, we've been talking about the how of the housing crisis. But the real conflict, it's about the what. What are we even trying to achieve? The two sides in this debate, they're working from completely different playbooks, with totally different ideas about what the end goal should even be.
And this right here is the fundamental split. From a more conservative viewpoint, affordability is what happens naturally in a healthy free market. Just build enough homes, let supply do its thing, and prices will eventually come down for everybody. The liberal view is completely different. It defines affordability as a basic human right. It says housing shouldn't cost more than 30% of your income, and that if the market can't deliver that, then the government has to step in to make it happen.
And so that leaves us with the one question that's really at the absolute heart of California's housing crisis. Is housing a right that should be provided, or is it a commodity that has to be earned? How you answer that question, well, that probably determines which solutions you're going to support, which trade-offs you think are worth it, and ultimately, what you think the future of California ought to look like.